We have all been trapped in that sterile conference room. You hit the third hour of a mandatory corporate seminar, the speaker is enthusiastically gesturing at a whiteboard, and you realize you stopped absorbing a single word they were saying about 45 minutes ago. Curriculums like this fail because they rely on a massive operational error. They assume that introducing a learner to a concept is the exact same thing as teaching them how to do it. A salesperson could perfectly recite a list of 50 product features from memory. That does not mean they have the competence to actually sell the product in a dynamic environment. True proficiency requires physical, applied practice. So, what is actually happening inside the physical tissue of the human brain when it gets blasted by this continuous fire hose of unpracticed information? Dropping a mountain of raw data onto a learner overloads the brain's biological hardware, guaranteeing the training will fail before the learner even leaves the room. This diagram shows the frontal cortex, the engine for deep concentration. Processing new concepts aggressively burns glucose. When we plot this on a graph, taking in constant new information is like bicycling straight uphill. Energy consumption spikes rapidly into the danger zone. Once those glucose reserves run dry, the reasoning center stalls out completely. You literally lack the physical energy to process another data point, which is why your head often starts to ache after a long lecture. If a curriculum demands continuous attention without building in recovery periods, the exhausted brain takes a break by force, completely losing focus and zoning out of the lesson entirely. Expecting a learner to maintain constant cognitive effort without relief is a biological impossibility. Any curriculum that ignores this physical limit is inherently broken. In 1992, researcher Richard Heyer put this exact process to the test by scanning people's brains while they played the video game Tetris to see what successful practice actually looks like inside the skull. This heat map compares a novice player on the left to an expert on the right. The novice's brain glows bright red, draining massive energy on easy levels. After weeks of practice navigating harder levels, the exact same brain runs entirely cool in blue. Through rigorous practice, the learned behaviors shift away from the energy-hungry frontal cortex. This structural change severely lowers the physical cost of performing the action. It transforms that grueling uphill climb into the effortless, low-energy act of coursing downhill. Practice is a biological necessity. It rewires the brain to operate efficiently, freeing up the cognitive energy reserves needed to tackle the next unfamiliar challenge. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi identified an ideal psychological state for learning, a state of deep, continuous engagement he called flow. Looking at this spectrum, flow exists in a narrow channel directly between two extremes. If the challenge far exceeds the learner's ability, it causes high-energy frustration. If the challenge is fully mastered and requires zero effort, it creates low-energy boredom. Intentionally giving learners moments to coast downhill, using skills they already know, allows them to recover. That extra energy allows them to immediately recognize and absorb the critical new concepts when the uphill climb begins again. A perfectly structured curriculum deliberately alternates between uphill cognitive strain and downhill recovery, sustaining that flow state indefinitely. Consider an organization that tried to cram 5 years of technical maintenance into a 2-week boot camp. A few employees survived through sheer willpower. But for the vast majority, massive biological overload meant retention completely breaks down, leaving a pile of forgotten information. The organization rebuilt their system. They shortened the initial class and spaced the remaining curriculum into simulated e-learning modules spread across months. They backed up these modules with direct job shadowing and a rigorous field assessment system, requiring managers to physically verify real-world competence on the ground. Spreading the practice over time provided the one thing a boot camp lacks: context. The sales team could take a small amount of information into the real world, test it, fail, and adapt, all without overloading their cognitive limits. Humans are not hard drives that can simply be loaded with raw data. Learning is a biological adaptation, and it demands structured strain, adequate spacing, and genuine practice to forge a permanent skill.